This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Who is Lady Whistledown? That is the mystery to be solved in the show Bridgerton. Now, this is going to be a bit of a change of pace from my other Can I Solve videos, since from what I understand at least, this is not a murder mystery. In this show, I believe we'll be trying to figure out the identity of a secret gossip columnist. This is not a recap of the show Bridgerton. This is me watching the show for the very first time and trying to figure out who is Lady Whistledown before the show reveals it. After every episode that I watch, I'm going to jump in here and break down all of the suspects, theories, and clues that I have onto who Lady Whistledown could be. That way, at the end of this video, we can go back and see exactly how close or how far I was from solving it correctly. With all of that out of the way, let's jump right into episode 1 and start figuring out, can I solve Bridgerton before the reveal? Sorry guys, real quick, I just wanted to say that if Lady Whistledown really wanted to keep their identity a secret, they should have used Surfshark. This video sponsor is Surfshark VPN. Surfshark keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all of the data between your device and the internet. Also, Surfshark allows you to change the location of your device to anywhere in the world. May I suggest London, England, home of the Bridgertons? By changing your location, you can actually access and unblock content from other countries. Content libraries, streaming services. Say you're on vacation in a different country, but you want to watch Bridgerton, but Bridgerton isn't available in that country's Netflix. So you change your location back home, bada bing. Home sweet home. But it's not just about location. Surfshark helps secure your online data. It encrypts your data and secures your personal information when you use free public Wi-Fi, which can be a goldmine for hackers. And Surfshark's clean web feature blocks ads, trackers, malware, and phishing attempts, allowing you to surf the web safely. Get it? Surfshark? Surf the web? Use my link down in the description for this exclusive deal from Surfshark. And Surfshark VPN offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there is no risk to try it out. All right, now we can jump into Bridgerton episode 1.
Has anyone else read what Lady Whistledown has written of late?
I am a bit out of my element here. So the episode starts with like a bunch of rich girls trying to get married. And they're being presented to the queen as like, look at these ladies ready for marriage. I don't know. It's just weird because it's like, it's like these moms and they're like, here's our daughter. She's 15. Time to find a man. And the main family is the Bridgerton family. And so the whole episode really is about Daphne Bridgerton and how it's her turn to, find a husband or whatever. And so Daphne goes in front of the queen and it's a little ceremony. And the queen actually declares Daphne as the diamond, which I think means that she's like the hottest girl of the season. It's like America's Next Top Model, except instead of Tyra Banks, it's the Queen of England. So Daphne's like the most eligible bride. It's like a football draft. She was draft pick numero uno. But it doesn't exactly work out great for Daphne after all because of Lord Bridgerton. That's her older brother, Anthony. I think their father died, and so he's the head of the family now. The only issue is he doesn't want to be the head of the family. He is in love with an opera singer is right here. I don't even know if you can see. Should I have picked a different picture? But yeah, he's in love with this opera singer, but she's not one of the rich fancy ladies that he's supposed to marry, I guess. So he's not allowed to marry her. And it's like a point of contention because he's supposed to be like, since he's the head of the family, it's his responsibility to be helping Daphne find a proper suitor. But he wants his life with the opera singer instead. He doesn't want all of these responsibilities. So he's just kind of hoping he can bail and then one of his younger brothers will pick up like the lordship. But then he has a conversation with his mom, Lady Bridgerton, and she's like, you need to get your shit together. So he breaks up with the opera singer, she's devastated. And he takes up the role of finding a good husband for his sister, Daphne. So they go to this big ball, which is like, it's a big dance where all the rich ladies and men go. And I guess this is kind of like where they start searching for a mate. But at this fancy ball, we see the arrival of the Duke. This is one suave motherfucker. Now he is the Duke, which I think is like kind of like a prince of a certain area. Like he's not a prince, but it's like he's like, I don't fucking know. But he's the Duke now because his dad died, and he hates his dad. He hates his dad so much that he vows to never marry and have an heir. So that way, the family name dies with him. You ever hated someone so much that out of spite, you're just gonna live alone? Like even after they're dead? It's pretty hardcore. But honestly, I respect it. But when the Duke runs into one Daphne Bridgerton, his plans are foiled because this immediately becomes a will they, won't they storyline. They bicker and they seem to strongly dislike each other. In fact, they hate each other. But also there's some romantic tension there, you know what I mean? Meanwhile, the Bridgertons are not the only family in town. We meet a family called the Featheringtons. And she's the Mama Featherington. I love the names in this show. So the Featheringtons are also trying to get their daughters married this season. That's these two girls, the Featherington girls. And they have another sibling. I haven't put her on the wall, and I forgot to write down her name. Oh well, one of these two girls ends up fainting in front of the queen when it was their turn to like be Tyra Banks, and that embarrasses the family. But it seems like this is just like an embarrassing family as is. That leads us to this next character, Marina Thompson. Now she is a Featherington cousin, and she has been sent to live with them for the season because it's time for her to get married too. And something crazy that happens is she ends up being like, all of the dudes are knocking on her door and not Daphne's. And so now the whole episode is just like a scramble to try to find husbands for sisters and daughters and cousins, because there's only so many lords looking for a wife, you know? And to make matters worse, there's this new tabloid gossip column thing, and it is written by a woman named Lady Whistledown. And Lady Whistledown is writing all about everything that's happening with everybody in the London, you know, the Kingdom of London. But yeah, Lady Whistledown, she's spilling all the tea, and she's talking about how Daphne Bridgerton is practically ineligible and how no man is interested in marrying her. And Lady Bridgerton is talking about how Marina Thompson is the real prize of the season. She talks about the Duke and all of his issues. She's making fun of the whole Featherington family. And like it gets to the point where everybody in England, I guess, is reading Lady Whistledown and just eating up all the drama. The entire public's opinion is being persuaded by Lady Whistledown, including the Queen. So when Lady Whistledown is writing about how no men are calling on Daphne, all that's doing is making all of the men who are hearing about this be like, oh, well, then there must be something wrong with her. So now like no guys are coming to visit Daphne. And since Whistledown is writing about how Marina Thompson is the real diamond of the season, every dude in London is just knocking on her door because they want to be the lord that gets the most eligible lady. Oh, and by the way, at the end of this episode, we find out that Marina Thompson is pregnant. So that's pretty scandalous. I'm sure that's going to cause some serious drama, especially if Lady Whistledown finds out. So Lady Whistledown is causing some serious problems, right? Daphne very upset because she can't get no man. And this could ruin her life. What if she ends up as an old maid? And the only lord that is interested in Daphne is a guy named Lord Burbrook, which, God, I don't have his picture up here either. Here, this will have to do for now. He looks kind of like this. Imagine like Peter Pettigrew from Harry Potter. That's kind of the vibe. Anyway, he's a fucking loser. This guy is very lame. He's a lot older than everyone else, so because he I mean, you know, he's never been able to find a wife because he's not very likable. And I will say, like, I mean, we don't know a whole bunch about him, but everyone in this show is very surface level and mean. So they could just be bullying him because he's ugly. But not everyone is super surface level. One of the Featherington daughters, who I haven't put up here, hold on, Penelope. This is the third Featherington girl. How embarrassing. I should be more prepared than this. Anyway, I think her storyline is kind of like the ugly duckling. You know what I mean? Like, out of her sisters, she's kind of the least attractive. Or, you know, maybe the Cinderella story is probably the better way to describe it than ugly duckling. It's just like all of the effort from her mother is put towards her two sisters, and she's just kind of like Penelope. And Penelope gets bullied by like a lot of the other girls at the balls too. It just seems like she doesn't really fit in. At one of the dances, the fancy ball or whatever, one of the other girls actually spills a drink on Penelope on purpose. And it's when she is talking to one of the younger Bridgerton brothers, Colin. And the mean girl that spilled the drink on Penelope was trying to dance with Colin, but Colin picked up on the vibes and instead danced with Penelope, which I think they're good friends. It's a sweet moment, you know what I mean? During this same fancy event where Penelope gets drinks spilled on her, Anthony, who is Lord Bridgerton, remember, because his dad is dead. That's very sad, but he is in charge. He doesn't want to be in charge. He wants to be with the opera singer. But he tells Daphne, his sister, that he has accepted the proposal of Lord Burbrook. Who's this guy? Well, Daphne is understandably furious. She doesn't want to marry that loser. I mean, look at him. She was supposed to be the most eligible bachelorette. She was supposed to have her pick of the kingdom. Now she's stuck with creepy old Burbrook. She runs off to the garden where Burbrook himself shows up. And he's like, as your husband. And she's like, you will never be my husband. I will never marry you. And so he gets super mean and aggressive and kind of like grabs her like he's going to do something. And he's like, you don't have any choice. I'm your last chance. Hey, I'm not trying to be mean to any of my British viewers out there. That's just how he sounds. If you know anything about me, you know I'm a perfect impressionist, and that is spot on. Anyway, Burbrook's like, no one wants you. Now, of course, we know that the reason that no one wants Daphne is because Lady Whistledown has been writing about how no one wants Daphne. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But Lord Burbrook thinks that it's because they're meant to be. He was like, she was the diamond of the season. Everyone should be knocking on Daphne's door, and yet there's no other suitors. It must be perfect that I'm the only one trying to get with her. The lord that nobody wanted, and the lady that nobody wants. But he gets super aggressive, grabs her, she punches him in the face, knocks him clean out. He's on the ground. The Duke, who kind of overheard the last couple sentences and saw what happened, he was going to like run out and help Daphne before Daphne took care of business herself. And the Duke, I mean, he's just super impressed. So they have this conversation, and this is like the first time where we really kind of see more of the will they instead of the won't they. So Daphne explains to the Duke her situation of she's gonna end up stuck marrying Lord Burbrook. And the Duke's like, you can't possibly be thinking of marrying him. And she's like, I don't have a choice. If I don't get another offer, I'm going to have to marry him. And he's like, oh yeah, because of that terrible author, Lady Whistledown. I hate her as much as you do. Because Lady Whistledown had been writing about the Duke a lot and talking about how the Duke needs a wife. And here's the funny thing about the Duke, right? He hates moms. He hates moms because they swarm him and they harass him trying to get him to marry their daughters. So he's upset because Lady Whistledown has all but issued a challenge to the terrible mamas, encouraging them, provoking them to find me as their prize. So this is where the Duke and Daphne come up with a plan. They will pretend to be together. That way, Lady Whistledown and everyone in the kingdom will think that the Duke has finally found his Duchess. And so that would mean, they all leave him alone. Because Daphne is being courted by a Duke, it will show that she is a very eligible bachelorette. And every suitor in the kingdom will get jealous and want Daphne for himself. So that solves her problem of not being seen as suitable for a suitor. The Duke will become unavailable, and Daphne will become desirable. Problem solved. So that's what they do. The episode ends with the two of them dancing together at the big fancy ball. And as the episode is, fading to black, we get a narration from Lady Whistledown. And this is Lady Whistledown writing in her article that is getting sent out everywhere. And she's like, how Miss Bridgerton secured the Duke, we do not yet know. So now let's ask the real question, guys. Who is Lady Whistledown? We have several suspects, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't think I quite know enough about any of these characters to really start laying down the law. So what I'm going to do is point out some of the suspects that are brought to the attention of people in the show, right? So these are suspects that people in the show have mentioned in the episode of who they think Lady Whistledown could be. The very first Lady Whistledown accusation actually comes from Lady Featherington. This was very early in the episode when Lady Whistledown was talking about how great of an option Daphne is. This is before Lady Whistledown switched up, started trashing Daphne. And when that was happening, Lady Featherington insisted maybe it was Lady Bridgerton herself who was Lady Whistledown, and she's just writing good things about her daughter to get her public, attention for the marriage. And I'm gonna be real, it's a pretty good theory from Lady Featherington, until, of course, Daphne starts getting trashed, in which case I don't think Lady Bridgerton would be trashing her own daughter. Because this isn't just not getting a date to prom. This is messing up the whole family's future. The next time that we see characters in the show guessing who Lady Whistledown could be was at a Bridgerton family dinner. And they're actually eating with the Duke. And Lord Bridgerton, Anthony, brings up, hey, maybe it's just some random lady. Just some random woman that we do not know. And honestly, that's not a bad theory, but Daphne quickly shuts it down, saying, no, she's obviously a woman of access. Because that's the thing. Lady Whistledown isn't just gossiping. Lady Whistledown seems to know what's going on behind closed doors. So it needs to be someone who is at least around or is able to talk to people in London, figure out what's happening. For example, how would Lady Whistledown know that no one had come to visit Daphne, right? Because that's in her house. The only way is if people around were talking about it. It's yeah, you see, there's no one knocking on that door. So it could be the kind of thing of maybe someone in the house told her, or maybe she's someone in the house herself. But it's not just the Bridgerton house that Lady Whistledown seems to know what's going on, and it's all the houses. So I think that we can just eliminate the theory that it's just some random lady. Then Colin Bridgerton brings up the idea of, what if Lady Whistledown isn't even a she? His theory is that it could be a man using a female pen name to protect his identity. And that is definitely a thing that we should keep in our pocket, because it doesn't really help us as there's just as many men in this show as women. I know that might be hard to believe by the characters on the board currently. Then one of the Bridgerton sisters said that it's obviously Lady Danbury. Now, Lady Danbury is a character that we did meet in this episode. However, we don't really know a lot about her. And Daphne actually shuts down that theory as well, saying that Lady Danbury likes to give her critiques in person, face to face, which seems to be a pretty solid point. And then another one of the Bridgerton sisters says, well, could it be Lady Featherington? And then everyone dies laughing. So it's the whole table's no. Now that's very interesting, right? Because why couldn't it be her? Now, obviously, Whistledown has trashed the Featherington family quite a bit. So that's probably why everyone said it couldn't be Lady Featherington. Or maybe the idea that it's her is laughable, right? Maybe they don't think she's smart enough to be able to write such a good column. Regardless of why they all said no at the exact same time and laughed about it, I think we should definitely keep Lady Featherington as an option, because just the idea of the way that the whole Bridgerton family said no and they all started laughing, I think it was the show's way of being don't even worry about Lady Featherington. It's obviously not her. Wink, wink. Which means that, they could be trying to distract us. It could be Lady Featherington. And I think a good way for us to put that theory to the test is by seeing what happens with the whole Marina Thompson being pregnant storyline. Because, obviously Marina is staying with her cousins, the Featheringtons, and Lady Featherington is the one who finds out that Marina is actually pregnant. Now, obviously, Lady Whistledown hasn't figured out about it yet because Lady Whistledown would have quickly exposed that. So, in the next couple episodes, if Lady Whistledown writes about Marina Thompson being pregnant, and it gets out, then that tells us a few things. The first thing it tells us is that Whistledown did not know about it until Lady Featherington knew about it, which means could be a connection there. And vice versa. If Lady Whistledown never seems to write about it, but we know that Lady Featherington does know about it, then that would probably say that Lady Featherington isn't Lady Whistledown. The names in succession are difficult. So, do we have any other theories? Well, I have one big one. And then I also have a little theory that I don't really like, but I feel like I should bring up. I'll start with the latter. I think maybe Lord Burbrook could actually be Lady Whistledown. Let's start with his profile. He is an older lord who doesn't have a family, and he's having a really hard time finding a suitor. Lady Whistledown starts her new column right at the start of courting season. Maybe his plan was to use this column to hype himself up and allow himself to find a match. Or maybe not even hyping himself up, more so tearing some people down, like Daphne, to where she has no suitors except for him. Or maybe it has nothing to do with him finding a wife. Maybe he just likes toying with people. He is a pretty powerful lord with a very long lineage, so it must really frustrate him that no one seems to respect him. So maybe he is lashing out against the kingdom by writing and gossiping about them. I think it's a pretty good theory, even though I don't think I don't buy it 100%. So what about my big theory? Now you're gonna have to hear me out, okay? I think that there is a strong possibility that Lady Whistledown is none other than Daphne Bridgerton. Now hear me out, bro. I know what you're thinking. But Chase, why would Daphne make it to where she can't find a husband? Why would she possibly want to get stuck with Lord Burbrook? Well, my whole theory is based around a conversation that she has with her older brother, Anthony. They're arguing because he has scared away all of her potential suitors. All right, let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. I know that there are going to be words that I don't say right. So, don't bully me. Anyway, this conversation between Anthony and Daphne, they're bickering. He says that the reason he hasn't, he's been running off all of these suitors is because he wants what's best for her, and it is his duty. And then she's like, well, what about my duty? You have no idea what it's like to be a woman. What it must feel like to have one's entire life reduced down to one moment. This is all I have been raised for. This is who I am. I have no other value. If I am unable to find a husband, I am worthless. Now, the show is making it out to seem like she is upset because she feels like her self-worth is tied to her finding a husband and carrying on the, legacy. That she wants to find a good husband and have a family and do what she is supposed to do. But I think that she could actually be saying something else. I think that she is not furious with him. I think that she is furious that that is the situation that she is in. She says the thing about her life being reduced to a single moment. That if she doesn't find a good husband, then she is worthless. I think that she could be writing as Lady Whistledown to try to destroy any chances of her, getting a husband in this season. She is fighting against the traditions that are being placed upon her because of the times. She makes herself undesirable to all suitors so that way she doesn't have to fit inside the box that is the traditions of ancient England. And since she is Lady Whistledown, she can make sure that she does not ever find a suitor, and meanwhile, she is in control of the entire public's opinion about everyone, including the Queen. I think that possibly the role that Daphne truly wants is to be the head of the family. She doesn't want to be reduced to that single moment. She wants to be the one in charge. And that is the role that Lord Bridgerton, Anthony, doesn't even want. The role that he was hoping his little brothers would take from him. Daphne doesn't want to just be doing what the girls should be doing. She wants to do what's best for her. And that is why Daphne is Lady Whistledown. Dude, I was really worried because this isn't usually like my kind of show. I was afraid I was going to struggle to find theories and clues and suspects. But this is really no different than Pretty Little Liars or Riverdale. This show rules, by the way. I can't wait to keep watching. So, for episode 1 of Bridgerton, of who I think Lady Whistledown is, I am going to lock in Daphne. Now, let's go to episode 2.
Do not tell me that is yet another scandal sheet. This one is different. This subject's my name.
My name is Lady Whistledown.
I just watched episode 2 of Bridgerton, and dude, this show fucking rules. I'm buckled in. Loving the ride, brother. Let's jump right into our last theories that we locked in the last part and see how they're going in episode 2. Starting with our theory that we brought up that maybe Lord Burbrook, who's the loser, could actually be Lady Whistledown. So much happens with Lord Burbrook that it's actually insane. So Daphne and the Duke's plan from last episode is in full effect. Next thing you know, every man in London is at Daphne's door. But Lord Bridgerton, that is Anthony, Daphne's older brother, keeps shutting it down because he had already made a promise to Lord Burbrook. But Chase, didn't Daphne punch Lord Burbrook in the face last episode? Surely he doesn't still want to marry her. You're wrong, dude. Burbrook is Coco for Daphne Puffs. And now Lord Bridgerton, Anthony, is upset with his good buddy, the Duke, because it seems like the Duke is courting Daphne even though she has already been promised to Burbrook. Because that's a whole nother thing, right? It's like, so Anthony and the Duke are like best bros from back in the day. And Anthony knows that the Duke never plans to marry or have an heir, you know? So by him courting his sister, whose main objective is to marry and have an heir, that is in conflict of interest. And he also knows that the Duke has spent a lot of time in brothels and doing whatever he does. So he is very upset with the Duke. He's being pretty demanding that Daphne marries Burbrook. I should also point out that this whole argument that takes place between the Duke and Anthony happens while they're bare knuckle boxing each other. It's pretty sick, dude. Next thing you know, Burbrook corners Anthony at a party because, you know, all these people do is go to like galas and balls and stuff. Burbrook corners Anthony at one of these parties. He's very upset. He's wanting to make sure that Bridgerton is not going to go back on his word. He made a vow. And Anthony is assuring him that, hey, I am a man of my word. I told you you're going to marry my sister. You will marry my sister. And then the Duke steps in and he tells Anthony about what Burbrook did in the garden. You know, he tells him that Burbrook actually tried to attack Daphne and, you know, mess up her honor. And then Daphne punched him in the face, knocked him out cold. This causes Anthony Bridgerton to be furious at Burbrook. He cancels any deal for them to be married. And then he tells Burbrook that he'd kill him if he ever tried to touch his sister again. Well, now Burbrook is furious with the Duke because the Duke has messed up his marital plans. So after the ball is over, he follows the Duke down this dark, creepy alleyway. And Burbrook just starts being real nasty, dude. He's saying that Daphne belongs to him. And the Duke is like, well, I think Daphne should have a say-so. And then Burbrook is like, hey, when I'm buying a horse, do I ask the horse's opinion? This dude sucks, bro, which is why I drew him like that. It keeps getting more and more intense, and to the point where like Burbrook brings up the Duke's father and mother, which is a big mistake. So obviously, one thing leads to another. The Duke beats the shit out of Burbrook in this alleyway. Now I know what you're asking, because obviously you haven't seen this show. Yeah, I know you sick freaks. I know you watch these videos even though you have no idea anything about the show that we're watching. What caused the Duke to be so upset about his mother and father? Well, I'm glad you asked. We get a whole lot of flashbacks to the Duke's childhood in this episode. We find out that the Duke's mother died during childbirth with him, so he never met his mother. And then we find out why the Duke hates his father so much. It turns out that his father is the worst person alive. The Duke, he couldn't talk for the first few years of his life, but he was really great at reading and writing. But his father was furious that his son couldn't speak. And so he got really upset. He goes to hit the Duke to make him speak, and the Duke does speak. But he speaks with a stutter. And this sets the Duke's father off big time. He's like, my son is an idiot! He calls him a half-wit. It's real bad. And then we find out through these flashbacks that Lady Danbury, that's this lady down here, she is actually like the mother figure to the Duke. Kind of like a godmother. She was his mother's closest friend. And so after his mother died in childbirth, she actually showed up and taught him and raised him, fixed his stutter, really took him up under her wing. And it's actually a very sweet story. It's like they are a mother and son. Because his father was the worst person ever, he never saw his dad. And after several years, Lady Danbury After several years, Lady Danbury takes the Duke to meet his father because he'd been acting like his son doesn't even exist. And we get this really just devastating scene where this little boy, well, I mean, he's not little in this picture, but this little boy is speaking to his dad. And he's like, I wrote you letters. I wanted to let you know I wasn't dead. Did you get them? It's heartbreaking because this little kid thought that his dad thought he was dead because he never spoke to him or saw him. And we see that his stutter is pretty much totally gone except for when his father starts lashing out, he starts getting the stutter again because he's scared. But yeah, and then the Duke's dad, he calls Lady Danbury a bitch. It's intense. He calls his son his worst failure, and he's going to treat him just like his worthless mother, as if he never existed. The dude sucks, so that's why he freaked out when Lord Burbrook brought up his father and mother. It's a sensitive area. So now that the Duke has beat up Burbrook to the point where, I don't know if they had hospitals back then, but he definitely would have gone to the hospital. That must mean that Lord Burbrook is going to stop trying to marry Daphne, right? Wrong. This time he shows up looking like he was murdered, and he threatens the Bridgerton family. He tells them that unless he marries Daphne in 3 days, then he is going to spread rumors all across the kingdom, especially to Lady Whistledown, that he and Daphne had already slept together, thus defiling her honor and making it to where no one would marry her. Different times, man. Different times. Now, if this rumor does spread, and if it does get written about in Lady Whistledown's articles, it will destroy the whole Bridgerton family. So Anthony is furious. And he's like, I'm going to challenge Burbrook to a duel. And then his mom, Lady Bridgerton, is like, you're an idiot. Duels are illegal. But before we can even get to the bottom of this whole dueling situation, Daphne steps up and she just goes, I will marry him. I'll do what I have to do for the family. And this really sucks, dude. And everyone knows it sucks. But get this. The queen herself, the Tyra Banks of this kingdom, writes a personal letter to Lady Bridgerton asking her to visit for tea. I would like to point out that the queen in this show is hilarious. She's like a little toddler who just needs to be entertained by everyone. And she really loves Lady Whistledown. Yeah, she's a real riot. It seems like she hates her husband, King George, who we haven't met yet. Oh, and she's always snorting cocaine. Anyway, they have tea essentially so that the queen could explain to Lady Bridgerton that since she named Daphne the diamond of the season, it would reflect poorly on her if Daphne ended up married to Burbrook. So it was a sign for her to take care of that. And that's all Lady Bridgerton needed. She sets off and she has got a plan in motion. She invites Lord Burbrook's mother over for tea as kind of well, if we're going to be one family, we got to get to know each other. But while they're having tea, Lady Bridgerton's best maid is talking to Lady Burbrook's best maid and getting all the tea. And that is how we find out that Lord Burbrook actually has a son with one of his servants. And before she was even able to give birth, he sent both of them away to live in squalor. Now, this scandalous information means that they officially have a way out. They start spreading the rumor all throughout town, all to the different maids, all to the different townspeople, and it ends up finding its way to Lady Whistledown as they planned, and it gets written into her column. So when Whistledown writes about Lord Burbrook and his scandal, it causes so much embarrassment that he leaves town, which gets Daphne out of her engagement to him. So I said all of that just to say, I don't think Lord Burbrook is Lady Whistledown. There will be times in this video where I mean to say Lady Whistledown and I'll accidentally say Lady Bridgerton, or I accidentally say Lady Featherington. Complicated names, dude. Which brings us to our other theory that we had in the last section, which is my theory that Daphne could be Lady Whistledown. And I think that theory still holds legs. Here's why. The plan that the Duke and Daphne had, that plan is working. The plan was to make her look more desirable, which it did. But then Lady Whistledown started bringing up new problems, saying stuff like, oh, if Daphne and the Duke are courting so much, how come the Duke hasn't proposed yet? Is something wrong with Daphne Bridgerton? Why isn't the Duke proposing? So now it's like, is the plan even working? So Daphne goes to the Duke and she's like, hey, you need to take me to more balls. We need to dance in public more often. You need to send me expensive flowers. And the Duke, to his credit, he's playing his part the best he can. But it just seems like the plan isn't working out all that well. Well, what if this is Daphne's own doing? We do learn in this episode that she does truly want to be a mother and a wife. So that part is not a charade. But she does make very clear that she wants to marry for love and not for responsibility. What if all of this is a plan by Daphne as Lady Whistledown to keep escalating and escalating, where it's like, okay, it's not enough that you're just taking me to these balls. Now you need to get me flowers. Now you need to take me to this. Now you need to do this. To the point where like he actually just proposes because he's in love with her. And I mean, that plan, whether it's true or not, that's just a theory, but it does seem to be working because the Duke is falling in love with Daphne. And Daphne seems to be falling in love with the Duke. And at the end of this episode, we see the Duke and he's watching Daphne dance at one of these parties. And he stutters for the first time in a really long time. And I think it's because he got nervous because he loves Daphne, which is super romantic. But here's the big issue with that potential relationship. The Duke made a vow to his father on his deathbed, saying that he will never marry and he will never have children. So that way the family name dies with him. And then he calls his dad a monster right into his face as his father is taking his last breaths. That's a pretty intense vow, but that vow seems to be in jeopardy now because I think that he's accidentally fallen in love with Daphne. And Daphne is looking for a husband who will love her and give her a child. Is the Duke able to do that? We'll see, but as for my theory that Daphne is Lady Whistledown, it's still possible. Like, you know, maybe she's pulling the strings to get the Duke to fall in love with her, but I don't know. That seems kind of shallow. Like, it doesn't seem like Daphne wants to force someone to marry her. But then again, Daphne does seem to be the only person in her family that actually seems to want to be a part of the traditions of the time. Because there's her little sister, Eloise. Eloise is up here. Eloise is like a badass who smokes cigs. And she talks about how she wants to be an academic. And she's actually like panicking in this episode, actually, because no one will tell her how babies are made. And she's worried because if she doesn't know how babies are made, then she might accidentally get pregnant. And that would ruin all of her plans for the future. Because all she really knew at the time was like, oh, when you got married, that's how you have a baby. But then she finds out that, you know, Marina Thompson was having a baby and Marina Thompson's not married. So now Eloise is like, well, what the fuck is up with that? It's really funny. I really like Eloise. Her best friend is actually Penelope Featherington. That was the sister that we talked about in the last part. Penelope also doesn't really seem to be into the traditions. It could just be because of like her relationship with her mom and sisters and everything. Then we have Lord Bridgerton himself, Anthony. He doesn't want anything to do with his responsibilities, but he doesn't want to let his family down, you know? So he's just kind of caught in this thing of like, I want to step up and be there for my family, but also I want to be with the opera singer. There's another Bridgerton brother. I can't remember his name at the moment. But he is a Bridgerton brother too, and he is talking to his sister Eloise You know, Eloise is kind of telling him about how she doesn't want to buy into the traditions. She wants to do her own thing. And he's like, yeah, we all do. These traditions suck, bro. You think we want to do this? And that just kind of seems to be the biggest theme of this show. It's a whole bunch of rich people who are shackled by the traditions of the time. They are trapped in the traditions that are their wealth and legacy. Even the queen herself is so bored with all of it that she's snorting cocaine and making contortionists contort in front of her while she reads the latest Whistledown articles. Anyway, do you remember Marina? Marina Thompson, she is pregnant. She is pregnant with the son of her town's priest. And she does not care about any of this stuff. She is in love with her boyfriend back home, but her boyfriend back home who got her pregnant was sent off to war. He is fighting in the war. And meanwhile, she is stuck with the Featheringtons. So my theory is, just like all of these characters, Lady Whistledown is someone who is so frustrated with the shackles of their traditions that they are targeting everybody. Whistledown just wants to tear it all down. Now that definitely makes Eloise a suspect. She is an academic, meaning she could write very well. And she has made it very clear that she wants to be more than just some lord's property. And the same goes for Penelope. She seems very smart as well. And the main thing about Penelope that I've locked onto is that Penelope gets bullied a lot by everyone. Other girls, her sisters, her mom. So I think that it would be a really good reveal if it turned out that Penelope, who gets bullied by everyone, is actually Lady Whistledown, who has power over everyone. Like, that's just a good character arc. It's that ugly duckling storyline we were talking about all the way in the beginning of this video. But if we're looking for people who hates the lifestyle and people themselves, look no farther than the Duke. It is a very particular plot point in one of these flashbacks that the Duke is very good at reading and writing. He despises everything that has to do with the legacy and his family name because of his hatred for his father. Now, I don't know what the motive is for him to be Lady Whistledown, but it definitely lines up that he could be. And then we have my final suspect, which is a really fun one. While the Queen is having tea with Lady Bridgerton, the Queen makes one of the servants leave the room, and his name is Brimsley. And after she sends Brimsley out of the room to go get her more cocaine, she turns to Lady Bridgerton and she's like, that one is a terrible gossip. If he heard our business, the whole town would know it. Everyone would know it. Interesting. Maybe it's because he has a way to write and info gets spread across the kingdom. And that would explain how, Whistledown knows everything. He's the Queen's butler. He's around for all of this gossip. He talks to the other maids and servants. And what's the reasoning? He's a servant. He's probably sick of these spoiled rich brats and how hard their lives are. How fulfilling must it feel for the Queen's butler to be writing articles that influence the Queen's decisions? That's a power trip, brother. And I really like the idea of Brimsley being Lady Whistledown. The only issue is we haven't seen a lot of him. You know what I mean? This is like kind of the first time that we even hear his name or see him at all, really. The theory that I think I'm going to lock in is because of my ugly duckling story arc idea with Penelope. Everyone looks down at her. They act like she's not good enough. So I think it would just be a really good reveal that it's like, hey, she's actually been the one puppeting all of your lives. The only issue with this theory is I don't think Penelope is that mean to be trashing people in her gossip column. Like, her best friend is Eloise Bridgerton. So would Penelope really be so evil to affect Daphne's chances of marriage? I mean, effectively forcing Daphne to marry Lord Burbrook of all people. But it's still early on and we don't know Penelope that well. So maybe she turns out to be way meaner than we think. I don't know. It's just Penelope is a character that we meet in episode 1 right away. So that means that like she has to be important for a reason. Why have we seen so much of her when I didn't even know that this guy was a Bridgerton brother? The show's called Bridgerton. So for that reason, I'm going to be locking in Penelope as my pick for who Lady Whistledown is for episode 2.
You do not know me, and never shall. But be forewarned, dear reader, I certainly know you.
Welcome back to the show. In case you haven't been paying attention, I am Bridgerton's newest stan. I just watched episode 3, and boy, things are really heating up. I will say, when I got like a million comments being like, try to find out who Lady Whistledown is in Bridgerton, I thought that it was going to be a bigger part of the show. And so far, it's been about 1% of the show, but we do get a few good clues this episode, so I am excited to start breaking those down. Plot-wise, this episode showed us Daphne and the Duke falling more and more in love with each other. And, you know, they're keeping up the ruse of we're just pretending, but we know. Daphne keeps on turning down proposals from other guys. And the Duke turns down an opportunity to get with the opera singer that, you know, Anthony used to date, but then he broke up with her. Well, you know, he turned her down, so. And there's a lot of romantic moments between Daphne and the Duke in this episode, and Daphne keeps having dreams about him. Like, they're at an art gallery thing at one point, and they, like, hold hands for just a second. Oh, and then Daphne doesn't know what sex is, and so the Duke tells her, kind of. And then the kind of most romantic part of all of this is also the saddest. There's a prince in town. He's the Prince of Prussia. And the Prince of Prussia is looking for a wife. And the queen, who is his, like, aunt, well, she's really pressuring the Prince of Prussia to marry Daphne. Because the queen gave Daphne the title of Diamond of the Season or whatever. And so if Daphne marries a prince, then that just really proves that the queen is spot on. Because that's the whole thing, is like Lady Whistledown has been writing in her articles that she thinks that the queen has lost her touch. And then Whistledown's writing about how Daphne doesn't want anything to do with the Prince of Prussia because Daphne is in love with the Duke. But then Lady Danbury pulls the Duke aside because it's practically her son. I mean, not really, but like she raised him, and she pulls him aside and she's like, look, if you are not planning on marrying Daphne, then you need to let her go because you are just wasting her time. There is a prince who is interested in this woman, and don't let her get too caught up in your charms and let her ruin the opportunity of a lifetime. And the Duke realizes that she is right. He has no intentions of getting married. Remember, because he made a vow to his dying father that he would never marry and have an heir just to spite him. So the Duke essentially breaks up with Daphne. Daphne doesn't understand. So the Duke gets harsh with her. They aren't together. They aren't even friends. Now go. Be with the prince. Daphne runs off crying. The Duke is telling everyone he's leaving London immediately. And they're like, dude, you still have work to do here. And he's like, I don't care. Take care of it so I can get out of here. So then there's a ball that same night, right? Which, I mean, there's always some sort of event for these rich people. It's just like they always have something going on. It looks exhausting. Anyway, Daphne decides, since the Duke like broke up with her or whatever, she's gonna ball out. She wears her best dress, gets her hair done in the best way, and absolutely stuns as she is making a grand entrance at this ball. I mean, jaws are dropping. The Prince of Prussia is like talking to this other girl, sees Daphne walk in and just walks away from her. And Daphne's playing it up because she's trying to make the Duke jealous. And oh boy, does it work, because when Daphne starts dancing with the prince, the Duke rushes out of there. Or should I say Prussia's out of there. To add insult to injury, Lady Whistledown is like narrating the end of the episode, you know, like she does when she's essentially reading what her article is about to be saying. And she's writing about what could have possibly happened between Daphne and the Duke. Was Daphne just tired of waiting for the Duke's proposal? Or did Daphne just trade up? After all, who wants a Duke when you could have a prince? Dang, dude, that must have stung when the Duke woke up and read that in the article the next morning. Or did it? And that brings me to my next theory. What if Lady Whistledown is the Duke? Now, this isn't my favorite theory in this video so far, but there's something that happens in this episode that made me at least wonder, like, is it possible? There is a moment where Daphne and the Duke are having a conversation, and they're talking about how they can't believe that they have managed to keep their secret, that this is all a ruse, away from Lady Whistledown. Daphne even says, Lady Whistledown knows everything about everyone, and yet our ruse has yet to be discovered. And the Duke kind of gives her this knowing look, you know? And when I saw that look, after Daphne was like, you know, Lady Whistledown knows everything about everyone, including the Queen, yet we have her fooled. And, you know, the Duke gives her that look. I'm like, is that like him being like, oh yeah, I wonder why she hasn't written about our secret? Because that's a really good point. How does Lady Whistledown know about everything that is going on and yet hasn't picked up on the most obvious plan scheme ever? So the theory at that point is, well, maybe the reason Lady Whistledown hasn't written about their scheme is because Lady Whistledown is one of the two of them. They would obviously not want to expose their own secret. And to be honest, out of the two of them, the Duke does seem to be more of a solid pick. But that being said, if the secret is truly just being kept between the two of them, which I'm pretty sure it is, that could be the reason Lady Whistledown does not know about it. Lady Whistledown seems to get her information from gossip, but if these two have not told a single soul, not even their mothers or mother figures, then that could probably be why the secret has not gotten out. But you know what they say? Only two can keep a secret if one of them is dead. My other theory from this episode is from a conversation that Eloise has with this Bridgerton brother. I think his name's Benedict. Eloise gives this big speech to him about how if he wants to do art, then just do it. It's easy for him because he is a man and this is a man's world. And then she uses Lady Whistledown as an example. Eloise says, Whistledown is a woman, which means she has nothing. And yet, she still writes. She has a great ability to write, yet has to use an anonymous name to protect herself because she is a woman. She's essentially saying that the reason that Lady Whistledown is using a pen name is because women are not allowed to succeed in the society. They would never let a woman be the biggest journalist, essentially, in the kingdom. The ladies of the kingdom are meant to find husbands and have heirs, not supposed to be famous writers. And that is when her brother flips the conversation onto Eloise and asks if Eloise is Lady Whistledown. He mentions that she is an accomplished writer and she's constantly writing in her journal. And she knows everyone's business. She has more opinions than anyone in London. And Eloise tells him that she is not Lady Whistledown. However, if she was, she would not tell him. I think the show leaves this moment kind of open-ended because, well, like, I think it's kind of saying, like, hey, always suspect Eloise, but it's probably not Eloise. Now, before I lock in the theory that I'm going to rock with for this episode, I'm going to do some, like, rapid fire plot points that happen in this episode that might end up being important to the mystery later. Like the Marina Thompson being pregnant stuff. Well, Lady Featherington has had enough and she has decided that Marina is going to quickly find a man to marry her so that way they can hide the pregnancy, make it seem like the new guy that marries her is the father. And so, you know, they're trying to quickly tie up the scandal before it gets out. However, Marina is dead set in love with her boyfriend. He is going to come back and save her. But here is the issue. She has not gotten any letters back from her boyfriend who is away at war since she told him that she was pregnant. Now, granted, he is at the front lines of the war, so apparently it's like hard to get letters to and from Spain, but she's getting very worried, and then one day a letter arrives. He wrote to her to say that he never touched her. He doesn't want anything to do with this. Never talk to him again. She's devastated. I'm devastated. If you're watching the show, you're devastated. But alas, as the great poet Selena Gomez once sang, everything is not what it seems. Turns out that Lady Featherington forged that letter to try to trick Marina into giving up on her boyfriend so that she will quickly marry someone of Featherington's choice to hide this scandal. And that seems to work. Now, the reason I bring up that situation is because it directly ties into the theory that I am going to lock in for episode 3, which is the same theory that I locked in last section, which is Penelope Featherington. There's the reasons that I've already mentioned why I suspect Penelope, mostly just the story arc of she's the one that kind of gets bullied by everyone. She seems to be like the weakest. And then I think it'll be a cool reveal if it's like, nope, she's actually awesome. And I think she's definitely capable. She's best friends with Eloise and seems to have a lot of the traits that Eloise has. And so when Eloise was talking with her brother and he's like, you're an accomplished writer, you have so many opinions, I think those same things apply to Penelope. And even though Lady Whistledown has been particularly harsh on the Featherington family, I still think that could work since Penelope is kind of picked on by her own family. Like this could be kind of like her way at getting back at them. But the biggest reason that I really think it's Penelope who is Lady Whistledown is because Lady Whistledown has not written about Marina Thompson being pregnant. Remember what Daphne said to the Duke in this very episode. Lady Whistledown knows everything about everyone, including the Queen. And we've pointed out how, since the Duke and Daphne's secret is truly just between the two of them, it's hard to get out, which could be why Lady Whistledown doesn't know about it. But the entire Featherington household, maids, children, father, servants, they all know about Marina being pregnant. This is the exact type of scandal that Lady Whistledown would have written about immediately. The second that Lady Featherington had the maids, messing with the bed sheets or whatever when she found out that Marina was pregnant, it should have leaked. So is Lady Whistledown just losing her touch? She doesn't actually know everything about everyone? Or is Lady Whistledown actually really close with Marina and wouldn't want to put out and ruin her life? Because that's the thing. Penelope and Marina have become extremely close. Penelope is the one who sneaks and tries to search the mail for Marina's letters for her boyfriend. Penelope is defending Marina from her mom. She's been sneaking her food and snacks and treats because Marina's been locked up in her room. She was even there for her to comfort her when she found out, fake found out that her boyfriend wanted nothing to do with her. Penelope is a good person and she truly cares about Marina. So that is why she would not expose her and ruin her life as Lady Whistledown. But there is still a major thing that I can't get over for this theory, and it makes me think maybe it's not Penelope. That is, why would Penelope write such harsh things about her best friend's family? I mean, Daphne was just getting destroyed by Lady Whistledown. And that question led me to an even deeper level of this theory. What if Lady Whistledown was not just Penelope, but also Eloise? Eloise and Daphne are constantly fighting about the whole societal rules and traditions. Eloise thinks it's stupid and ridiculous that all the women are supposed to do is find a husband and do what they're told. While Daphne defends that lifestyle and tells Eloise that she just doesn't understand. My thought is Penelope as Lady Whistledown wasn't the one writing about Daphne. That was Eloise, who in her mind was trying to free Daphne of the shackles of these traditions. She was trying to help her sister in her own mind by, no longer having to be the diamond of the season. Because women are more than just pretty objects to be picked by men. So that's why for this episode 3, I'm going to lock in Eloise and Penelope together for who is Lady Whistledown. Now, if you excuse me, I must get dressed and ready for a ball that is about to happen. There's going to be dancing and lots of dreadful mamas.
The social season is upon us. We shall discover which young ladies might succeed at securing a match.
The mystery is heated up. So far, I would say that about 1% of all of the episodes that we have seen so far have been about who is Lady Whistledown, which has made it a little difficult to figure out like clues and theories. But this episode, episode 4, oh boy, the mystery is afoot. This whole episode, I mean, there's of course all of the drama that's going down between Daphne and the Duke, which we'll get to, but the subplot for this episode, it's all about figuring out who Lady Whistledown is. Eloise Bridgerton, remember she is one of the younger Bridgerton sisters. She is very intelligent and wants more from her life than just being some man's property. She is hanging out with her best friend, Penelope Featherington. Now, in the last part, I locked in both of them as being Lady Whistledown. Anyway, the two of them are hanging out and they're talking, and Penelope asks Eloise if she is excited about the prospect of her sister, Daphne, potentially marrying a prince and becoming a princess. And Eloise is like, no, once Daphne is engaged, I'm next up. I hope Daphne stays on the shelf forever. Well, when I hear that, I'm like, baby, that's motive. Maybe Eloise was, as Lady Whistledown, dragging her sister to prevent her from getting married, so that way Eloise would not be like, it wouldn't be her turn to get married off. But then the conversation between the two of them keeps going. And Eloise brings up Lady Whistledown and how great her life must be. And what's really funny about this conversation is the whole time that Eloise is talking to her best friend Penelope about how great Lady Whistledown's life must be, Penelope's kind of like looking at her like, you know, if Penelope is Lady Whistledown, what a funny conversation to be having, where Eloise is like, isn't Lady Whistledown amazing? And then if Penelope's Lady Whistledown, she's like, yeah, she's great. And like Penelope even says like a little thing where she's like, that's quite the life that you have imagined for her, Elle. And it's like, when this conversation took place, I was like, it really might be Penelope. Because in this conversation, Eloise is like, I'm going to figure out Lady Whistledown's identity. And Penelope's like, oh, I don't know, Elle. Like, her identity's pretty protected. And Eloise is like, we are the smartest girls in London. If anyone can figure it out, it's us. And then Penelope like does some excuses. Oh, well, no, I don't really have time. I've got to go to this ball with my family. And so she's like, well, you go do it on your own. And while this is happening, I'm like, oh my God, like this is like, is this too obvious? Like she is Lady Whistledown and she doesn't want her best friend Eloise to like look into who Lady Whistledown is because she is pretty smart and she could probably figure it out. This costume is driving me crazy, dude. Jesus. We're gonna have to rock it like this for a minute. Eloise is not discouraged by Penelope telling her not to look into Lady Whistledown, and Eloise has made it her mission to discover her true identity. She's actually doing the same detective work that I am throughout this episode. Eloise is watching some of the maids in the house like gossiping, and the next thing you know, Eloise sneaks into like the head maid's bedroom, and she gets caught by the head maid, and the head maid's like, what are you doing in my room? And Eloise is like, you are Lady Whistledown. And then the head maid just starts dying laughing. And she's like, I thought you were supposed to be the smart one. You think Lady Whistledown is a servant? Do you think we have time to sit down and write an article with all of the work that we have? Plus, if I was Lady Whistledown, who makes a killing, do you think I would be working for you? And Eloise is like, oh yeah, no, that adds up. Y'all work crazy hours. My bad. Meanwhile, while Eloise is looking for who Lady Whistledown is, we see Penelope at one of the balls, and she's actually hanging out with Colin. Penelope actually acts a little bit like Lady Whistledown in a conversation with him. She makes a comment talking about how that lady, her new baby, looks awfully like her butler. And you know, they laugh about it, but that's the exact kind of observation that Penelope makes that leads me to think like that is a Lady Whistledown observation. Then what happens next is pretty devastating. Penelope does have a really big crush on Colin. I mean, it's not said, but it's pretty obvious. But Colin is actually interested in Penelope's cousin, Marina Thompson, the pregnant girl. Meanwhile, Penelope and Marina, you know, they've gotten extremely close. So Penelope doesn't want to tell Colin that Marina is pregnant, so because, that would ruin Marina's life. But she loves Colin, So, this is a hard situation. So Penelope's upset. She's dealing with her emotions and her feelings. Eloise shows up and starts being like, I think I'm figuring out who Lady Whistledown is. And Penelope just snaps on her. She, even makes Eloise cry. And I couldn't tell if Penelope was lashing out because she was just upset about the Colin and Marina situation, or if she was already upset and then Eloise talking about exposing Lady Whistledown just set her over the edge because she is Lady Whistledown. So when it comes to the theory that I locked in the last episode, which is I think that Lady Whistledown is both Penelope and Eloise, I do not think that is the case any longer. Eloise is searching for Lady Whistledown pretty intently. And it's not like a show or a charade. She's doing research on her own time in private. So I think that eliminates her as a suspect. But that adds even more of a case for it to be Penelope. I mean, what a better storyline than Eloise searching for who Lady Whistledown is, and it ends up being her best friend who she's with all the time. But this episode really made Penelope extremely obvious as a suspect, and that worries me. Now, this is not a mystery show, which could be throwing me off. Because in mystery shows, typically, they'll give you some strong red herrings to misdirect you from looking at who could actually be whodunit, right? But this isn't a mystery show. So I'm thinking maybe this is way too obvious and I'm falling for a red herring. But if this isn't a mystery show, the writer's priority is not distracting me from solving the mystery. That's not the point of the show, which means that this could just all be foreshadowing and subtle clues and not actually misdirection. But I can't break from my bonds of a mystery solver. I would be devastated if I just fell for the most obvious red herring with literal red hair in the whole show. So I'm going to try to look past the very obvious Penelope and look for some other suspects. And while we do that, we can talk about what's going on with Daphne and the Duke. Daphne is officially being courted by the Prince of Prussia, and the prince gives her an extremely nice necklace. Then the prince takes her to a boxing match, and the Duke is there because his best friend is the main boxer / boxing promoter. And if you don't remember, Daphne is extremely upset with the Duke because the Duke kind of broke things off between them. Even though it was supposed to be a ruse, they were falling in love with each other for real. And so Daphne keeps looking over at him, and he keeps looking over at Daphne. And then Anthony, Daphne's brother and the lord of the Bridgertons, tells Daphne that he got word that the prince is going to be proposing. And that causes Daphne to panic because, this is a great opportunity. She's going to be a princess, but she loves the Duke. Lady Bridgerton, Daphne's mom, can obviously tell something's up with her daughter and is trying to figure out how to help. She's talking to her daughter of hey, if you want to marry for love, it's okay to not go with the prince. Go with the Duke. And then that's when Daphne lashes out and she tells her mom about how the whole thing between her and the Duke was a big ruse. So that means if Lady Whistledown finds out about the ruse now, we know that it's because it leaked outside of just the two people, Daphne and the Duke, which would send our eyes over to Lady Bridgerton as a suspect. And this whole scene, Daphne's mom seems very upset. I don't know if it's because she's just upset because she wants her daughter to be happy and marry someone for love and not just for political reasons, or if she's upset because she's actually Lady Whistledown and she's upset because she fell for a ruse from her own daughter. So anyway, they go to another fancy ball. Daphne's there with the prince. She's wearing the necklace. The prince proposes to Daphne out there on the dance floor. Daphne panics, needs to go outside and get some air. She goes outside, she takes the necklace off so that she can breathe. The Duke walks up to say goodbye because he's leaving London. Daphne and him argue. Daphne storms away into the garden. The Duke chases after her. They're in the garden. They start kissing. They start doing more than kissing. But then they're caught in the middle of their heated, passionate romance by none other than Daphne's brother, Anthony. And he is pissed. He starts punching the Duke. He's like, bang, boom. Because Daphne, by making out with the Duke, her honor has just been decimated. If anyone finds out that Daphne has been kissed before marriage, it's over. The prince will not propose to her. No one will propose to her. So right then and there, Anthony demands that the Duke proposes to his sister and marry her. The Duke refuses. And this is such an intense scene because you can tell that the Duke wants to say yes, that he'll marry Daphne because he loves Daphne, but he made a vow to his dying father that he would never marry. So Anthony is furious and challenges the Duke to a duel at dawn, which is pretty baller. Now, they don't point this out directly, but I noticed, and probably most of the audience noticed, Daphne leaves her necklace that the prince gave her sitting outside and just goes home without it. I think that's probably going to be a major plot point soon. But even worse than that, one of Daphne's competitors, actually the girl that the prince was going to pick before Daphne became available when her and the Duke split up, she actually saw Daphne and the Duke getting it on in the garden, which is a big problem because if she reveals it, if she tells people and Lady Whistledown writes about what happened between Daphne and the Duke in that garden, the Bridgerton family is ruined. Now, this is not a deep dive on the show Bridgerton, but if it was, I could do probably a solid 30 minutes about how this duel is kind of posed as like all of these guys trying to defend Daphne's honor. Like her brother's like, I must defend her honor. And the Duke is like, I completely understand. I have destroyed her honor and you must do what you have to do. But really, it's just a way for them to get out of their responsibilities that have been thrown upon them. Like Anthony just wants to do this duel because one of like three things happens. He either shoots and kills the Duke, which means he's got to leave the country and, go on the run, which means he's free of his shackles of responsibility and he can take the opera singer with him, or he could get shot and killed, in which case he's dead and he doesn't have to deal with the responsibilities anyway. Or the third thing that could happen is neither of those things happen, but dueling is still very much illegal and he has to go on the run anyway. So that's him getting out of all of his responsibilities. The Duke, who just hates himself, he's just got like a self-loathing that comes from his father's hatred of him, probably. He sees this duel as an opportunity to either die or probably just die. Because the Duke's whole thing in this duel is like Anthony aims at the Duke to shoot at him. But I don't know if you guys seen Hamilton, but like sometimes in duels, Alexander Hamilton, 1776. Like the gentlemanly thing to do if you're like in the wrong or whatever is to just like point in the air and shoot, I think. And so that's what the Duke does because he knows he's in the wrong. So he's just going to point up, but Anthony's aiming at him. But then before any of that can happen, Daphne rides her horse in between them. Anthony almost shoots his sister. Daphne shows up at the duel because she goes over to everyone and she goes, someone saw us. You have to marry me or else I am ruined. My family will be ruined. And the Duke, he looks devastated, but he tells her he can't marry her. He won't marry her. And Daphne's just blown away. She's like, you hate me that much? That you know that my name and my family's name is about to be ruined. I will never marry. I will never have children. I'll never be happy because you won't marry me? And he's like, no, I won't marry you because I love you. You deserve children. You deserve a family that you so much desire. I can't have children. And Daphne's taken aback because she's like, oh God, he does love me, but he can't have kids. And then like when he said this thing about not having kids, in my head, my theory is that he got like a vasectomy or something. I don't know if they had those back then, but that's my theory. Either way, Daphne's brother Anthony is like, Daphne, get out of here. We must continue our duel to regain your honor. And then Daphne's like, no need, for the Duke and I are to be wed. And everyone's like, yo, what the fuck? Even the Duke, he's like, what are you talking about? I just told you I can't have kids. But I guess Daphne doesn't care. She loves him that much. Or it could just be like, she just had to make a hard decision because it's like, I'm having to choose between being ruined and ruining my family's name or being married without children. And married without children, probably the better of those two options. So yeah, I went through that whole plot line. What does that have to do with Lady Whistledown? I'm not sure, but I think it could definitely give us like a leg up when we see like what happens with Lady Whistledown in the next few episodes. Because if Lady Whistledown writes about what happens between the Duke and Daphne in the garden, then that means that whoever Lady Whistledown is not a friend of Daphne. Because a friend or a relative of Daphne would never, ever expose her of doing this because it would ruin her life. So if Lady Whistledown writes about it, we know that it's not a Bridgerton or one of the family friends, right? Because remember we had the theory of maybe it's the Duke. Like remember because we also had the theory of like maybe it's the Duke. He would never write what happened between them as Lady Whistledown if he's Lady Whistledown. So if Lady Whistledown doesn't write anything about it, then we know it could be someone close to Daphne. Now, if Lady Whistledown doesn't write anything about what happened between them in the garden, everyone's fair game, and this doesn't really matter. And then there's a whole storyline going on with Lord Featherington, which is hold on. This is Lord Featherington. He is the father of the Featherington family. He has gambled away all of their fortune. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything else, but I'm sure it'll tie in at some point. But yeah, a lot happens in this episode. Everything's getting really chaotic. I'm really struggling to figure out who Lady Whistledown is because like I said, for most of the episodes, it's been like 1% of the episodes. This one, we got a little bit more. So yeah, who am I going to lock in? I mean, the Penelope idea, I think it's way too obvious. But it just is so good of a theory. Then there is the idea of Lady Featherington, especially now that we know that her husband has gambled away their fortune. Maybe Lady Featherington is Lady Whistledown and she has gained a fortune of her own. Because something very interesting that happens in this episode is one of the Featherington girls actually like receives a suitor. And they seem to really hit it off. They're kind of a cute couple. But the guy leaves and doesn't keep pursuing her because he talks to Lord Featherington. And Featherington tells him that she doesn't have a dowry. Which I think is when, like, if these lords, if they marry one of the ladies, they receive, like, a lump sum of money along with it. Or something like that. Anyway, Lady Featherington, with all of her issues, you can't deny that she loves her daughters, at least these two. And she wants them to be happy. And she's very upset when she finds out that they don't have a dowry anymore. So maybe something happens where she uses her Lady Whistledown fortune to get the dowry back. And that's how, like a clue that we'll have maybe in the next couple episodes where it's like, hey, how did she get the dowry back? Well, she's got some of her own money put away. And I never did get over that scene in episode 1 where the Bridgertons and the Duke were going around being like, I wonder who Lady Whistledown is. Could it be Lady Featherington? No. Ha 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 ha. How absurd. Because that's kind of like, well, maybe it is her. I mean, she's kind of a mean lady, but I definitely think she's smarter than people give her credit for. And she definitely seems like mean-spirited enough to write really harsh and devastating things about Daphne Bridgerton. But then that would also mean that she was writing really mean things about her own family, which I don't think she would do necessarily. I don't know. It's the best choice I have right now. So I'm going to lock in Lady Featherington for my pick of who Lady Whistledown is for episode 4.
Let it be known, if there's a scandal, I shall uncover it.
Guys, I don't know who Lady Whistledown is. I just watched episode 5, and it's a really great episode, but I'm even more confused now about who Whistledown is than ever. So the whole episode is about the Duke and Daphne's wedding. They wanted to get special permission to get married very quickly, so that way they could try to get ahead of it before the scandal comes out. But the special request to get married early gets rejected. Probably because the queen is very upset that Daphne chose the Duke instead of her nephew, the prince. So the Duke and Daphne go directly to the queen to plead their case. The Duke gives a very passionate speech about how much he loves Daphne, and it works. They're married immediately. Now, there's still some issues between them, but don't worry, because by the time we get to their wedding night, everything is okay. It's a very happy ending. Except it's not the end of the season, and we don't know what's up with Lady Whistledown. There are still 3 episodes left in this season. I thought season 1 would end with, the Duke and Daphne's wedding. Like, that's what we've been building up to. What is going to happen for the next 3 episodes? But, I guess the Duke and Daphne aren't the only storylines that this show has. After all, we do have the whole Marina Thompson being pregnant thing. Penelope is very upset because Colin and Marina are now, officially together. And Penelope tries to get her mom to break up that situation because she's like, Mom, Colin is still a young man, and he's not going to propose anytime soon. Marina is going to be exposed as pregnant, and that doesn't work. And so then Penelope goes to Marina herself and just kind of like pleads to her, like, Colin is my friend. Do not trap him in a marriage and with this pregnancy. Like, don't do this to him. He's a good man. And then Marina's like, well, would you rather me trap a bad man and then I'm stuck in a marriage with someone who treats me terribly? Or should I trap a man who will treat me great? And honestly, go off, Queen. Marina's big plan is that she is going to seduce Colin into sleeping with her before any sort of proposal or anything, so that way he'll have to propose to her. But the thing is, my boy Colin, he's too respectful. He ain't gonna do that. But it still works out because he just proceeds to propose to Marina anyway. So yeah, that's what's going on with them. And then there's the other Bridgerton brother who wants to be an artist. He's been hanging out with these like art people and going to their parties, and they kind of have like these like freaky parties. Anyway, it is like in a time where Benedict is trying to find a place where he belongs, it seems like he's kind of finally found a place where he belongs, along with like these artist, free-thinking people. We also finally meet the King of England. It seems like he has like dementia or Alzheimer's, and he's really struggling with that, which is why we don't see him often. It's why the Queen is kind of like the face of the royalty. It really seems like the Queen is having a very difficult time over it. It really, like, I was led to believe that the Queen like hates her husband, but I don't think that's the case at all. And then the whole like last 15 minutes of this episode is just Daphne and the Duke sex scenes, just like one right after another. So again, like, we didn't get much about who Whistledown is. There is one key moment that happens at the Duke and Daphne's wedding where the Queen, who is in attendance, overhears Eloise accusing Lady Danbury of being Lady Whistledown. And the Queen is like, you must tell me what you know. Lady Danbury like immediately refuses that it's her. She's like, I wish. If you find out, let me know, though. So it looks like Eloise and the Queen are now going to be working together to try to figure out who Lady Whistledown is, unless the Queen is actually Lady Whistledown. And she was just asking Eloise about what she knows so that she could figure out how close she is to finding out her true identity. I'm going to be completely honest. The only person that makes any sense whatsoever to be Lady Whistledown is Penelope. The issue is, and this has happened to me in one of these Can I Solve videos before, is I do not want to look like an idiot and pick the most obvious person, because then it's just so embarrassing. My biggest like reason for like it's got to be Penelope is, one, the fact that Lady Whistledown has not written about Marina being pregnant, even though that entire Featherington household, maids and servants and butlers and all, know about it. That is the kind of thing that would have leaked. But since Penelope and Marina are very close, Penelope would not expose Marina like that. Guys, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm like stuttering. And then there's the whole Daphne and the Duke scandal, which Lady Whistledown has not written about, which means that it's probably someone close to the family, which would be Penelope. I mean, her best friend is Eloise Bridgerton, or at least was. They had a falling out. But I don't want to look like an idiot and just pick the most obvious suspect. So then I was thinking like, okay, well, what's a really out there wild pick? And then I remember the opera singer. I believe her name is actually Sierra. Now, just to refresh your memory in case you haven't watched the show or if you don't remember, Anthony, who is Lord Bridgerton, he's the head of the family. He was seeing Sierra, the opera singer. I think her name's Sierra. But then it was essentially like, hey, you have to do, like, you can't marry a non-rich girl. Like, you need to marry one of the royal families or whatever. So he breaks up with her. She's pretty devastated, but he's still madly in love with her. It's just he's trying to balance his responsibility and family life and his heart's true desire, which is Sierra, the opera singer. One thing happens that makes me kind of suspect her as Lady Whistledown. At one point, Anthony shows up to her house, and her roommate, who is the seamstress, like the local seamstress, she's like the one who makes all of these dresses for all of these balls. So it must be a pretty lucrative industry. Anthony knocks on the door because he's gonna he wanted to run away with Sierra after the duel in case he killed the Duke. But when that didn't happen, he was like, well, I'm still going to give her some money. So he goes and he knocks on her door. The roommate answers, who's the seamstress, and she's like, she's gone. She left town. One of the things that happened in this conversation, the roommate says to Anthony, do you think that she needs your money? I'm thinking maybe that can mean that she doesn't need his money because she has a fortune of her own. The Lady Whistledown fortune. Because that's the thing. All of England are buying Lady Whistledown's articles, and they're not cheap. And she is an opera singer. She's singing at all of these fancy parties all the time, which means that she is near all of the rich people. She could be hearing the gossip. That could be how she is writing as Lady Whistledown. But also, she's not around much. We do not see her very often. It seems like it's a very minor plot to the show, which means I feel like we need to point our direction towards a major character in the show, someone that we are seeing all the time. And Penelope, we see her all the time. And for what reason? I mean, she's a part of the Marina pregnancy storyline a little bit. She's a part of this Colin situation because she has a big crush on Colin, but he's with Marina. She's best friends with Eloise. She's always involved. And even though it's probably going to make me look like an idiot because I'm falling for the biggest red herring of the show, and I've done this so many times, I'm going to lock in Penelope as my pick for who Lady Whistledown is for episode 5. And I think the best way to prove this is Penelope is running out of options. She is trying to prevent Marina from ruining Colin's life, from trapping him in a marriage with a child that is not his own. And she's done what she can, and I think what's going to happen is Penelope is going to have to reveal that Marina is pregnant. And she is going to do it as Lady Whistledown. The only issue is I do not know if Penelope is such a good person. I do not think that she could do that to someone she cares so much about. Oh my God, the show is stressing me out, dude. It's so good. It's such a good show. But all of you who commented that I should solve this mystery, you must like to see me in pain and misery because there's not many clues, guys. Let's watch episode 6.
All is fair in love and war.
Miss Daphne Bridgerton.
I don't really know what to say. I just watched episode 6 and dude, I don't know. Like, it's obviously Penelope, right? Or am I just stupid? I feel like I'm falling for like the biggest trick. I mean, oh God, I'm gonna get mocked online. I just can't see anyone else being Lady Whistledown. Like, I don't know if I'm just stubborn, because I've done this a lot. I've done this a lot where I lock onto a suspect and I just can't seem to see past it. I've done this many times, but I literally just can't see how it could be anyone else on this wall other than Penelope. I can tell this is stressing me out because it's like the YouTube voice is gone. This is all me, baby. This is just Chase. In this episode, kind of the whole plot is about the Colin and Marina Thompson situation. Colin proposes publicly. It causes a situation with his family. But the part that we're really going to focus on is how this proposal in this drama affects Penelope. Because Marina actually corners her after Penelope keeps making rude comments about Marina. And it's like, to be fair, Marina is doing a bad thing. She is manipulating Colin into marrying her so that way she does not get exposed as having a child out of wedlock. But I mean, Penelope was roasting her pretty hard. And so Penelope and Marina have a conversation about whether they're even friends or not, because Marina still really likes Penelope. It's Penelope that's acting pretty harsh towards Marina with good reason. And Penelope essentially says, I will never bring scandal upon you or our family, but I do not condone your actions. And I feel like that's essentially Penelope is saying I'm not going to tell anyone about you being pregnant. However, you really suck for this. And when that conversation takes place in the episode, I'm like, so that explains why Lady Whistledown has not exposed this. It's because Lady Whistledown is Penelope. And Penelope just told her to her face that I will not expose you. And throughout this entire episode, we see Penelope trying to figure out how to break up this engagement. She even goes to Colin and tells him that Marina was madly in love and is still madly in love with her boyfriend who's off at war. And Colin doesn't seem to really care. Colin's like, well, she's choosing to marry me, so I win. And Penelope is just learning firsthand that men are impossible to deal with. Am I right, ladies? Hit the subscribe button. Penelope finds out that her mom is the one who forged the letter to Marina, and it was not actually her boyfriend. So she goes to Marina about this. She's extremely excited. She's like, Marina, your boyfriend did not dispose of you. My mom wrote this letter. You can still be with your boyfriend. And Marina's like, it's too late. My boyfriend, even if he didn't write this terrible letter disowning me, he still hasn't written me back, meaning he wants nothing to do with me. I'm going to start showing soon, and I need that Bridgerton boy to marry me first. And in this same conversation, Marina just lays in to Penelope. She's like, you love him, don't you? That's what this is all about. Penelope, Colin will never love you. He sees you for what you are, a little girl. I am a woman. And I mean, dude, she is really, really mean to Penelope here. Comes across like a villain. And when I see this, I'm like, I know what the show's doing. The show is making Marina out to be very unlikable right now because Marina is about to be exposed for being pregnant by Lady Whistledown, aka Penelope, because Penelope has no other choice. If she is going to save Colin from being manipulated and tricked by Marina, she is going to have to ruin Marina's life and cause some issues for her own family. And then at the end of the episode, that is exactly what happens. Lady Whistledown exposes that Marina is pregnant, and while we're hearing the narration that is happening, Penelope is running to Eloise, who they haven't talked to in a while after their big fight, and she's just breaking down crying. And it pretty much just reveals it right there. Penelope is Lady Whistledown, right? Why else would she be crying? Is she just crying because Marina was extremely rude to her? Or is she crying because she had to do something she didn't want to do and ruin Marina's life? I mean, am I stupid? I mean, it's blatantly obvious, right? But if it's so obvious, is this just a trick? Is it a trick? Am I falling for the easiest trick? The only other thing I can think of, because I mean, the timing is impeccable, right? Lady Whistledown reveals Marina is pregnant at the exact moment that Marina and Colin are about to run off and elope. So my only thought process is, okay, if it's not Penelope, maybe Lady Featherington overheard Marina being terrible to Penelope and was like, oh, you gonna talk to my daughter like that? Watch this. But I mean, I don't even know if I buy that 100%. I mean, who else could it even be? Daphne and the Duke aren't even in London anymore. And you know, they're dealing with their own stuff, mostly sex. Marina obviously wouldn't do this to herself. Eloise has been instructed by the Queen to discover the identity of Lady Whistledown, a task she seems extremely excited about. And then, of course, there is the possibility of it being Lady Bridgerton. And maybe she was like, I'm not going to expose Marina of being pregnant, but now her son is involved with her, and her own son is the one that's getting tricked and manipulated by Marina. So now she felt like she had to step in and do something as Lady Whistledown. But I don't know how that really helps with all of the old stuff, because it's like she wouldn't write about her own daughter and ruin her like her daughter almost married Lord Burbrook. And guys, that's all the info we get in this episode. Half of this episode is sex scenes with the Duke and Daphne, and the other half is Colin being manipulated by bad bitches. So unless you want me to like sit here and dissect the Duke's pullout game, which is like a main plot point in this episode, by the way, this is all we have to go off of. And I even tried doing like a thing where I was like, well, let me just think of like the most far-fetched idea, which was like, what if the king is Lady Whistledown? But we know that he is struggling from like Alzheimer's or dementia. So it's like, you know, and it's not like some of the teen dramas show that I've done this Can I Solve format with, where I can be like, there's a secret Bridgerton sibling, and that secret Bridgerton sibling was cast away for pregnancy out of wedlock, and she is the one who is Lady Whistledown, because this is just not that kind of show. I think because the show is not a mystery, the simplest answer is probably the correct answer. I'm going to lock in Penelope Whistledown once again.
You have no idea what it is to have one's entire life reduced to a single moment.
The time has come for the social season.
Tighter! She to breathe, Mama.
My name is Lady Whistledown. You do not know me, but I know you.
Sound the alarms. We have a real situation here. I just watched episode 7, and things are getting rambunctious. This is the second to last episode of the season, which means it's game time. We get a major bombshell at the end of this episode that changes everything. And it changes everything because it might be the reveal. So let's break it down, shall we? We still have our usual storyline stuff with like Daphne and the Duke. They're fighting a lot, classic them. And the scandal between Colin and Marina breaks out, Lady Whistledown's article. Daphne and the Duke decide to go back to London so that they could be there with the Bridgerton family throughout this scandal, which means we have the entire cast of characters back in the same place. Whistledown, by exposing Marina was pregnant, has destroyed the reputation of both the Featheringtons and the Bridgertons, but especially the Featheringtons, because like everyone just kind of feels bad for Colin because he was getting tricked. They despise the Featheringtons because they like were all working together to trick Colin. Like that's kind of the perspective of the kingdom. Meanwhile, Eloise is still hellbent on finding out Whistledown's identity. But now she has even more reason to discover Lady Whistledown's identity because her best friend, Penelope, has essentially been ruined. Penelope, by the way, is our biggest suspect. Anyway, Eloise is talking to Penelope and Eloise is like, Lady Whistledown has gone too far this time. And Penelope is like, I thought you were like her biggest fan. And then Eloise is like, well, not when she smears the name of my best friend. Basically, Eloise is trying to figure out who Lady Whistledown is so that she can go to Lady Whistledown and say, you need to write a retraction and restore the Featherington name, because this scandal has caused it to where the Featheringtons are like not invited to parties, they're not invited to the balls, which means that no one's going to want to marry them. And it turns out Penelope really does care about like the tradition stuff. She's a lot like Daphne in that way. She wants to find a husband, she wants to have an heir. And so, you know, Lady Whistledown has not only exposed Marina, but has destroyed Penelope as well, which is interesting because, you know, I'm a big believer that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. And I mean, even this situation, it's very intriguing to me because Eloise is like, I'm going to find Lady Whistledown and I'm going to make things right. And if Penelope is Lady Whistledown, then that's a very funny dynamic where she's listening to her best friend be like, I'm going to find her and I'm going to help you. And it's like, bitch, it's me. And then there's this whole thing where like the queen is tired of waiting on Eloise to find out who Whistledown is. So she has like a team of detectives working on it. And it seems like they're going to get rid of her permanently. Not kill her, I don't think. I think just like put a stop to the column. So basically there's like a ticking time clock in this episode for Eloise to find out who Lady Whistledown is before the queen's men finds out who Whistledown is. And Eloise has a theory that Whistledown is not one of the servants. She's scratched that theory out, but it's someone who works with the families, not for the families. Because she pointed out that Whistledown's info usually comes from big public events. However, the Marina pregnancy felt personal. So Eloise is doubling down that Lady Whistledown is a tradesperson. And so it's like, well, who is a tradesperson that is close to these families? And then that's when Eloise is in a carriage with her brother Benedict, and Benedict picks up this girl he's been kind of seeing, who we've met before, the seamstress, the lady who makes all the dresses, who is the roommate of the opera singer who Anthony was involved with. And we have, I haven't put her on the wall because I didn't think that she was a suspect, but she has been in the show quite a lot. She works closely with all of the Featheringtons and all of the Bridgertons and all of the families. And what's crazy is like, she's been like in the show a good bit. I never even wrote her name down. And Eloise in this episode is like, oh my God, it could be her. And that's where the episode ends. So it's like, that might have been the reveal. Because, I mean, she definitely would have been able to tell that Marina was pregnant. Because there was a literal whole scene. How did I not catch this? There was a whole scene where after Marina was planning to trap a husband, they went back to get her a new dress, and she makes a comment about how her measurements are wrong now. It's like, whoa, how have your measurements gotten so different so quickly? And it's like, they do some excuse like, oh, you must have gotten them wrong. But it's like, she's not stupid. She probably knew that she was pregnant. So that's how Lady Whistledown would have found out about the pregnancy. She would have absolutely no problem writing poorly about the Bridgertons either, because her only relationship with the Bridgertons, other than making dresses for them, is her roommate being like screwed over by one of them. And she only recently started like dating Benedict Bridgerton. I mean, I say dating, she's been like hanging out with him. So it's like, that's a very recent development. So it's not like, she would have, it opens it up for her to write poorly about them in the past. And then I started thinking, remember that time where we brought up the theory that maybe the opera singer could be Lady Whistledown because her roommate made the comment that she didn't need his money? Well, maybe the reason that she didn't need his money is because she has so much money. And we had also learned in one of these episodes that she's doing like a fake French accent. She's putting on a fake accent, I guess, to make all of these dumb rich people think that she's even better than she is or something like that. And so it's like, this is a person who we have seen disguise themselves for personal reasons. If you're putting on a fake French accent, it's not that big of a stretch to think you would use a pen name when writing gossip columns. Oh my God, there were blatant clues that I should have picked up on, especially that scene where she would have found out that Marina was pregnant. If that was the reveal, and it turns out that the seamstress is Lady Whistledown, I think that is a phenomenal reveal. I'm going to be kicking myself, and I look like an idiot, but great reveal. Very subtle clues. All the info was there. However, I'm not 100% sure that was the reveal. Here's why, right? And this reason is entirely just because, I know that there's multiple seasons of this show, right? And I think the best reveal for the future of the show is not the seamstress, right? So if the seamstress is revealed to be Lady Whistledown, how does that affect things moving forward? It doesn't really. But if Penelope is revealed to be Lady Whistledown, that affects things insanely moving forward. So I really am going to stick to my guns, and I think I'm going to keep locking in Penelope. Now, just as a quick rundown of things that are going on in this episode, Daphne is trying to help Marina with her situation. She's going to try to find the boyfriend that has gone away at war. Also, Lord Featherington, who is flat broke because of his gambling addiction, he comes up with a plan to make his fortune back. He goes to the Dukes, remember his buddy who's the boxer and the boxing promoter. He goes to him and he's like, I want you to take a dive. I want you to lose on purpose. And I'm going to bet an insane amount of money that your opponent wins. And when that happens, because you're going to lose on purpose, I will give you half of my winnings. It will set both of us up for life. Now, personally, I'm a sucker for a good fixed boxing match storyline, so I was really invested. The issue is this boxer, man, he's a great friend. He's a very honorable man. But this could help his family, who is very poor. He's got kids. Another thing that happens in this episode, Anthony and the Duke, who are now brother-in-laws, former best friends, still best friends, they get into a giant fist fight. And they actually suplex each other through a glass table. The Duke ends up telling Daphne about his vow to his father, and that's why he will not have children. And then Daphne's like, so you refuse to be happy because you promised your dead dad that you would never be happy. That'll really show him. And then the Duke's like, well, it sounds dumb when you put it like that. You just don't understand, okay? And last but not least, we see Penelope knocking on Marina's door. And she's like, Marina, I have to tell you something. I'm like, oh shit, is she gonna, admit that she's Lady Whistledown? We don't know though, because she walks in and we see that Marina has poisoned herself. So Marina might be dead. And it's that plot point, it's that storyline that makes me think that this isn't the actual reveal. The seamstress isn't the actual reveal. Penelope will be the actual reveal, because get this, what makes for a more intriguing storyline moving forward? A character that we kind of know is revealed to be Lady Whistledown, or Penelope having to deal with the guilt of knowing that her writing as Lady Whistledown led to the death of someone she cares about. I mean, the drama of it all. That is some really intense stuff that would go into the next season, right? So I'm going to double down. I'm going to say Penelope is Lady Whistledown. That is my locked in pick for episode 7.
This is what they have been trained for since birth. Which young ladies might succeed at securing a match?
You've always amused me, Miss Bridgerton. Ever since I was a schoolboy and you were...
Oh, but 5?
Let's go! We did it. We did it. We solved it. Bro, I was stressing during episode 8 the entire time because I was positive that I messed up and it was actually going to be the seamstress. And I was contemplating not even putting out this video because I was going to look like a fucking moron. Oh my God, dude, I've done 6 other Can I Solve videos and I'm not going to spoil any of them in case you haven't seen them, but I'll tell you my record. My record for actually solving the mysteries is like 2.5. And the half is being very generous. Oh man, this feels amazing. Now, to be fair, this is not a mystery show. So the focus of the writers was not to like do this crazy, curvy mystery. But still, they did a great job. It was a very satisfying reveal. I really enjoyed the whole season just as a viewer. In fact, I actually really appreciate that they didn't make Lady Whistledown to be just some random character just to have like a good twist. I like that it was someone that we could kind of tell throughout the season. Okay, so let's break down what happens in episode 8. A bunch of fun stuff happens, a bunch of shocking stuff happens. So here's like a quick rapid fire of some cool stuff that happens. Marina is alive. She did not poison herself. She was just trying to poison the baby. She ends up, she's alive. She apologizes to Penelope. They have like a wholesome moment. And then in this wholesome moment, we find out that Marina's boyfriend is dead. He died in the war on the front lines, which is very sad, but it did make Marina feel a little bit better because they found like a half-written letter. He was in the middle of writing her back saying that they were going to get married and have their child together and everything. And so it's bittersweet because she feels better because, she found out he didn't abandon her. The reason he didn't write back wasn't because he didn't love her, but also he's dead. So that sucks. But then the person who shows up to tell her this is actually her boyfriend's brother. And so he actually proposes to her himself because he's like, my brother took liberties with you. You're pregnant. It's my duty as the new head of the family to step up and correct that. And Marina's like, I want to marry for love. It's all, you can get out of here. But then she ends up coming around and accepting the proposal. We also got a scene where Eloise straight up accuses the seamstress, Madame Delacroix. Anyway, she's like, you're Lady Whistledown, and they kind of have this confrontation. And I was pretty devastated during that scene because it seemed like both of them were like, yep, I'm Lady Whistledown. And Eloise is like, yep, I know you're Lady Whistledown. And it seemed like that was like the reveal, and I was distraught. We also got to see the big boxing match where the Duke's best friend actually does take the dive. Lord Featherington bet the deed to his house. And so it's a good thing that the Duke did take the dive because the earnings got the Featheringtons their money back. They have their fortune once again. And the Duke's buddy, the boxer, he's made for life now. So it's a happy ending, right? The Featheringtons have their fortune back. This boxer now has enough money to take care of his family for life until the bookies that Lord Featherington made the bet with, I guess they kind of figured out that he fixed the match. So they kill him. Yeah. Lord Featherington gets murdered. I did not know it was that kind of show. We get the kind of an end to this Anthony and opera singer Sierra storyline. It looks like they're going to finally end up together. He's like, look, come with me to this ball and let's Let's just be together. Who cares what people think? He's like, my sister's the Duchess. My brother-in-law is the Duke. You know, we can do this. But she pretty much shuts things down. She's like, you know, I can't trust you to take care of me. And so it is his fault, but she puts the final nail in the coffin. He's heartbroken. Daphne finds out why the Duke is the way that he is when she finds his letters that he was writing to his father when he was a boy. They both work things out and they are madly in love, and they actually do have a child. Another interesting thing, which I kind of oddly called while I was being a brat earlier in the video, there is another Bridgerton sister who I guess she was just like somewhere else this whole time. And then last but not least, the reason that we are all here, the big reveal. This episode made it out to where it was almost 100% Madame de la Crue who was Lady Whistledown, to the point where the Queen and her men had set up a trap for Lady Whistledown at her like private printing press one night. And Eloise, who is now become like kind of friends with her and she's involved with her older brother, she goes there to try to save her from being exposed by the Queen. But it turns out Madame de la Croix wasn't even there that night. She was out of town. And so Eloise was like, well, then who did I save from getting exposed by the Queen? And that is when we see a hooded figure riding in her notebook as Lady Whistledown, riding in a carriage, lowers the hood, and it is Penelope. What a great show. And we locked in Penelope all the way back in episode 2. So technically, I solved it in the second episode. I did stray a bit, but it was mostly because I was like, it can't be this obvious, right? And what's really funny is the only reason that I locked her in the first place was because I felt like it was a good story arc for the person who was like bullied and picked on to end up being the most powerful person. I've mentioned it a few times in the video. It's like the ugly duckling storyline or the Cinderella story, right? It's a classic Cinderella story. She was picked on. She's the worst out of her siblings. Her mom treats her worse, and she ends up being the most important. Oh man, dude, this feels phenomenal. What a great. So this is actually my full-time job now, making these videos. So what a way to start my full-time career with a W. But yeah, this is my full-time job. So I would like to thank once again Surfshark VPN for being the sponsor of this video. And since I'm doing this full-time, my plan is to do these videos more often. So last year I did like one every other month, one a month. My plan is to do 2 a month this year. So that'd be pretty sick. If you want to help support the channel, you can always like, subscribe, comment. That always does wonders. But I also do have a Patreon and I have some merch available in the link below in the description. All right, cool.